Today I want to do a quick demo on creating web macros that have parameters in them. Generally speaking, when you're running a scan against a website that has authentication, you may want to parameterize your web macro. And the elements there that you may want to parameterize would be the start URL or the account information, so the username and password. So let's go ahead and do a demo of that real quick. So we're going to use my local install of the LIM application, which is a Fortify product. And on the next page, we're going to select the site authentication, and then we'll do a record. This will bring up the web macro recorder. The web macro recorder comes up, it's going to load up our application, which is the LIM. We're going to enter our username and password and sign in. So as we're recording our macro, you can see the steps here over on the left, and you can see that we have logged into the site. Once we're logged in, we're going to click stop. And then the next step that's important is we go ahead and replay the macro. This is going to allow TrueClient to do some additional steps. As you can see, it re-logged in, and now it's asking us to select an object on the page that identifies the application as having been logged in. We're going to go ahead and choose this header here. And the next thing it's going to do is it's going to look for a logout condition. You want to make sure that you have a logout condition. This is so that while the scan is running, if for some reason it clicks on the logout button, or if the server side decides to invalidate the session, that WebInspect can go ahead and replay the login macro and get logged back in. If it fails to create it, you can come up here and edit the logout conditions from this location. So let's go ahead and parameterize our macro. So what we want to parameterize is the start URL. And we're going to expand that first step, and we're going to expand the arguments. The most common way of creating a parameter in a login macro is to go ahead and highlight the entire contents of that parameter. And then right-click on it and click Create New Parameter from Selection. We're going to go ahead and give it a name and click OK. This is now parameterized that start URL, and we can go ahead and save this. I'm going to do a save as here, and we're just going to call it a lim URL, lim macro. And then we can close this out. So now you can see we have our macro in here. It has the parameter, and this is the place that you would edit it when you're actually running the scan. If you were giving this macro to somebody else, they would just load it up from the load menu here. You'd look for the macro in your Web Explorer and find it. Once you've got it loaded, it'll have the parameter down below, and you can edit that there. But let's go back in and edit this same macro again. We'll give it a second to load. While the browser's closing, we can look at this. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to expand that first step. You can see we have our JavaScript URL here. So the next option is to actually go in here and create it as a parameter. So when we do that, we're going to add a parameter name here. And that creates the parameter for the steps. The other half of that is to essentially create the parameter as an outside parameter. We're going to go ahead and add that here. It needs to match the parameter name that you gave it in the steps. And then in here, we can do our host. And click OK. And then we can save this. And then if we exit out, Now you can see that we have that second parameter in there. We didn't delete the first one, it's still in there, but you have the second one now. And again, you can modify this to however you want to modify the URL. Go back in and edit one more time. So, and again, you can do the same thing with the username, with the passwords. You would go into the arguments and apply the same steps. And again, if we go back into the parameters here, now you can see we've added that additional parameter with the account admin, and we can click OK, and you can modify that. So any of the steps that have arguments in them, you can go ahead and parameterize those arguments. The third way to modify the macros, and in particular it applies to this first one with the URL, is to go up into the settings. We can go into the interactive options, scroll down, and replace server with parameter. If you edit this one here, then anytime you create a login macro, that very first step where it's working with the URL is automatically going to be generated as a parameter. And if we click done, we can click save here. I'm just going to go ahead and save that and exit out. You can see we also have that additional parameter there now. We're going to cancel. Let's start this up again. We want to create a brand new macro with that new macro setting. So if we click record, it's again going to load our LIM application. But as you can see here on the left, it has automatically created it as a parameter. So any of the macros that you generate from now on will have that first step as a parameter. Go ahead and sign in. Again, we're going to stop, do a replay. Find that element on the page. It automatically created our logout condition. We're good. Save it, exit. And you can see again, it's got that automatically generated parameter for every macro that you create from now on. If you don't want that, we can go ahead and obviously uncheck it in the settings for the macro recorder. But that should cover most cases for most people where they're trying to essentially allow that to change that start URL. So this URL would need to match this URL. But otherwise, everything should be set as far as creating macros with parameters. And that should cover everything. If you have questions, feel free to let us know. Thanks for your time.